Hello and welcome to Security Scan. I am Vishal Dahiya, and this week we will discuss former Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's revelations on cross-border terrorism. Last week, Pakistan's ousted Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif spilled the beans on Pakistan's role in Mumbai terror attack in 2008, in which 166 people were killed and several others were injured. In an interview to the Dawn newspaper published on 12th of May, Sharif acknowledged that the perpetrators of Mumbai terror attack were of Pakistani origin, a fact which India has always reiterated. Sharif also acknowledged that several terror organizations are active in Pakistan and raised questions on his country's policy of allowing non-state actors to operate from its soil and crossing the border to conduct terror strikes in India. His remarks are viewed in Pakistan as a last-ditch effort to stay relevant in domestic politics by taking on the all-powerful military establishment. Sharif has been Prime Minister of Pakistan 3 times, but each time he was removed from office before he could complete his term. In 2017, Sharif had to step down from office due to corruption allegations and was later banned for life from contesting elections. So what are the implications of the statement made by Nawaz Sharif on the issue of cross-border terrorism and the internal dynamics in Pakistan and its relations with India? For more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of guests. Let me start by introducing them to you, beginning with Mr. Vivek Katju, former ambassador. We also have with us Mr. Sushant, Sareen, senior fellow of ORF, and we have with us senior journalist who has been in Pakistan for quite a long time, Rezaul, Hasan, Laskar, associate editor of Hindustan Times. Welcome all of you to Rajya Sabha TV studios. Let me begin with you, Mr. Katju, by trying to understand what exactly does this statement mean for India specifically and for Pakistan as well?
For India, it means 2 things. One, yet another confirmation that the Mumbai attack was carried out by Pakistani-based terrorist groups. And this time it has the added significance that it has come from the mouth of a person who, as you said in your commentary correctly, has been Prime Minister of Pakistan thrice. So it lends far greater credibility. Second, it is one more confirmation also that these policies, the policy of running terror groups, is that of the Pakistan army. And Nawaz Sharif, I think, actually was appealing to his people that this system of 2 or 3 parallel governments in Pakistan, as he put it, in actual fact, there is a parallel government, the civilian government and the army establishment. And the actual government, as far as security and foreign policies are concerned, or on all crucial decisions, is the army. They are the decision makers. So he was saying that this must end. And in this context, I think my last point is that he very significantly said that the army has got Pakistan to a stage of isolation.
Okay.
And he also said that Pakistan's friends, President Xi Jinping of China and the new friend,
Russia,
President Putin, are also cautioning Pakistan on these policies.
Okay. Quite interestingly, let me bring in Sushant here. Sushant, these 2 points, which Ambassador Katju pointed out, are something which are not very new, but they have been reiterated by Prime Minister Sharif. If you look at the context in which they have been said, obviously it's domestic politics, but then reiteration of these 2 points, how much effect it will have on Pakistan's image internationally as far as the issue of terror is concerned, and how much credence rather, or how much support does it give to India's stand on the same issue?
Well, I think we shouldn't overinflate the importance of what he said. The fact of the matter remains that everybody in the world knows what the deep state in Pakistan does, how they are involved in terrorism. The Americans and others are already breathing down their neck. So to that extent, there is, and the fact that there is no new revelation, we don't need the Pakistanis to admit that somebody came from Pakistan for the rest of the world to know that yes, Mumbai was by a Pakistani group, and in all likelihood, with the support of some state agencies in Pakistan, something which has been obliquely agreed to even by the former ISPR chief when he says that maybe there were some retired officers who were behind this whole action. I think what is important from our point of view is that the fact that this matter is now being agitated in Pakistan, and if and I completely agree with what Ambassador Katju is saying, Nawaz Sharif's motivation was domestic politics. You know, it's been a kind of a fringe benefit for us that, that we've got him to say what he said. But the fact of the matter remains that the issue on which he is agitating is that, look, you expect us, and remember one thing, there is a continuation to what he said in this particular interview to something which he said about a year and a half back in the infamous Dawn Leaks case, which he also keeps referring to.
So the same journalist.
He said precisely the same things.
That's right.
That, look, you ask us to go out and talk about our image issues and all, but every time we, ask anybody in the rest of the world, they keep pointing out to us our involvement in terrorism. So we need to stop that. And the second thing he said at that point of time was that even when the law enforcement agencies, something which he has repeated this time, even when the law enforcement agencies try and apprehend some of these terrorists, the deep state comes from the back door and takes them away. Now, this is something which we people who have been Pakistan watchers have known for the last 20 years, that this kind of a thing has been happening. So I think the fact that he brings those things onto the table would be causing disquiet in Pakistan, because that fake narrative which they've been trying to build, that they are fighting the world's battle against terrorism for the rest of the world, that's utter nonsense. The Pakistanis are continuing to play the double games on the issue of terrorism, continuing to support and sponsor some of these groups, which is what Nawaz Sharif is bringing out. He didn't bring this out because he's in love with India or, any such thing. He brought it out because it is part of his domestic agenda. It is his political platform that if people elect somebody, that person has to decide what the policies of the government are going to be, not the unelected judiciary or the soldiers or somebody else. It is the elected government's job. And if that is not going to be allowed, which is why he's now talking about vote ko izzat do, respect the vote. So I think it's part of his political campaign that he has raised this issue.
Okay, so the reasons behind his statement might be domestic, as you are pointing out, but at least some top people in Pakistan are acknowledging the truth behind the cross-border terror attacks. Let me bring in Rezaul Laskar here. You spent a considerable amount of time in Pakistan, and the way the entire Mumbai terror attack case has progressed there, in fact, there has been no significant progress in that particular case. There has not been one conviction. The way things have been moving on those terror groups as well, we've seen how Hafiz Saeed or LET or JUD, they were being protected time and again. Will there be a slight change of stand in which has been taken by the Pakistani establishment with respect to these groups?
I mean, I covered the Mumbai attacks trial for almost 5 years, while I was there. I mean, although it was a trial that was conducted behind closed doors, but we had sources, we were able to access things. I was able to access the first charge sheet that was filed. But I think that entire trial is a total farce. I don't think we can expect anything much from it. I wouldn't be too surprised if 5 years down the line, we would come to a stage where all the 7 accused would be let off for lack of evidence or some other reason like that. I mean, the judge has been changed about 8 times. The prosecutor who was handling this and the Benazir Bhutto assassination case was assassinated in the middle of Islamabad. And from all the information that I could gather, my hunch is he was assassinated more for this case than the Benazir Bhutto assassination case, because he was on the verge of bringing in some very important witnesses, getting some very important documents in the court. There's a lot of stuff that is in this trial that is, it clearly shows that the people who attacked Mumbai were from Pakistan. The plot was hatched in Pakistan. The first charge sheet that was filed by Pakistan's Federal Investigation Agency talks about a conspiracy in Pakistan. So in that sense, what Mr. Nawaz Sharif has said is not really new. But I don't think there's going to be a change in the way they're going to handle anti-India terror groups. Are they going to do something about other terror groups which are hurting their interests? Yes. But when it comes to India, I don't think we're going to see a change.
Okay, so you're saying that there is not likely to be any change internally in the affairs, specifically with respect to the non-state actors which are harming India's interests. Mr. Katju, do you agree with what Laskar is saying that not exactly, nothing much will change?
No, that's absolutely correct. Because if you noticed, when the army insisted that the National Security Council must meet and repudiate what Nawaz Sharif had said, it met. And the statement that they issued put the blame on India for lack of progress on the Mumbai trials. And they said that the core problem lies in India's execution of Ajmal Kasab and that they didn't get access to him. Now, this is absolutely absurd. We know it. But it's an indication of how the Pakistani general's mind has worked. But there's a reason for this. The Lashkar-e-Toiba is an arm of the Pakistan state. Nawaz Sharif also, if you notice his interview, what are the exact words he used? He said, let us call them non-state actors.
And he didn't name them.
But he didn't say there are non-state actors. He says, inko non-state actors ka naam de dijiye. I think the words, to my mind, carry the hint that they actually, there's an actual nexus between these so-called non-state actors and the Pakistani establishment. So that is why, for me, they've never been non-state actors.
Okay.
And because they are part and parcel of the Pakistani establishment as an instrument against India to maintain this facade, which is no longer there, but they still want to maintain it, of deniability, this will continue. And we should have no hope. In fact, the use of terror is now part of their security doctrine. And therefore, at one end it is terror, and on the other end, there are nuclear weapons. And if we feel, or our strategic thinkers feel, that one day Pakistan is going to abandon the use of terror, I think they are mistaken.
Okay, let me bring in Sushant here on taking it a little forward. The very fact that Nawaz Sharif has made these comments, obviously he was appealing to the domestic audience, and that is something which all three of you have pointed out. But these comments have definitely riled the army, the military establishment, the all-powerful establishment out there. How do we expect the army to reciprocate there, not internally but externally? Should India be on a watch out now? Will they step up the efforts in terms of the cross-border terror acts?
When did they step down on that activity? That activity continues apace.
It does.
And if there is any restriction on that, that will be because the Indian security grid or the Indian security posturing is such that they have restrained themselves a little bit. Otherwise, it's unremitting. It continues just the way it always used to. So I don't think that equation is going to end. The other problem, and the reason why none of this will happen, and the reason why this enthusiasm in India that somebody like Nawaz Sharif has spoken out against terrorism, I think speaks about the sheer cluelessness and the vacuity in the Indian mind of what Pakistan is all about. We seem to have suddenly forgotten that here is Nawaz Sharif, who for 4 years was Prime Minister of Pakistan and did not move a little finger to try and take the 2611 cases to the logical conclusion. He didn't do a damn thing. He started military courts. He could have sent, it was within the competence of the civilian government to transfer courts to military courts. Cases which cannot be handled in normal anti-terror courts can be sent to the military courts for quick justice, or kangaroo justice, if you might call it that. He didn't do this with these fellows. It is his brother's government in 2008 in Punjab, which at that point of time said that because we are banning the Lashkar-e-Taiba / Jamaat-ud-Dawa, we are going to take over their assets. They started funding these same people from the government of Punjab's budget. 10 years later, when the FATF pressure comes on the Pakistanis, we again hear an announcement that the same assets of these organizations which had been taken over 10 years back have been taken over again and are going to be funded again. It is bizarre the way they throw mud in everybody's eyes, and it is equally bizarre on how we get so enthused by what is happening in Pakistan and think that maybe the Pakistanis are going to turn a new leaf. Let me disabuse at least the Indian audience of their notions. Whether it is the civilians in Pakistan, whether it is the military in Pakistan, they are both on the same page when it comes to supporting terrorism against India. Depending upon what their domestic political equations and circumstances are, they might make some noises which seem to suggest that they might be making a break with the past. But otherwise, in reality, in totality, there is nothing happening.
And then one more, thing which is gives credence to what you said right now is that there has been no support from the other political parties or the political establishment in Pakistan on that. Yes, Mr. Katju.
No, on the other hand, they've called Nawaz Sharif a traitor. No, I just wanted to say one sentence. Our Pakistan policy cannot be made on wishful thinking. That we wish Pakistan changes. It will not change. We must see the reality and accept the reality for what it is. On terror, at most they calibrate terror, and they're very good at calibrating terror.
Okay, Laskar, the army part of it, something which I put to Sushant here. Do you believe there might be some change in their tactics, in their attitude?
Look, I mean, again, I hate sounding so skeptical, but I was in Pakistan when General Kayani, who was considered one of the greatest army chiefs they had in recent years, spoke about how the internal threat now was greater to Pakistan than any external threat. He was clearly hinting at, the role of militant groups. And, there was this whole brouhaha about how things are going to change and there was going to be a huge crackdown. I mean, we've had another 2 army chiefs after that. What has happened? Nothing. I mean, living in Islamabad, it was easier for me to pick up the phone and to speak to somebody from the Jamaat-ud-Dawa than to speak to somebody from the Pakistani government for a reaction. I mean, it is easier to access a Jamaat-ud-Dawa spokesman. So that just gives you an idea. And also, let's not downplay the importance of these politicians. Who was one of the first persons in Pakistan to talk about the Pakistani origin of Ajmal Kasab? It was nobody other than Nawaz Sharif. December 2008, just weeks after the attack, he said, I have made personal inquiries. I have found Kasab's family is in this village. There should be a thorough investigation. That was 10 years ago. His brother ran Punjab, province, and his brother continues to run Punjab province. And the biggest anti-India groups are all based in Punjab province. So, and of course, there is also the problem that, there are a lot of reports saying that Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's younger brother, Shehbaz Sharif, is much closer to the military than him.
Okay.
And he is the person who does all the, he's the via media between the PMLN and the military.
Okay.
So, and there are already reports that Shehbaz Sharif has been trying to get Mr. Nawaz Sharif to tone down things.
Okay. I'll go back to Sushant, and Sushant will take a little back. If we combine the statement which is coming from, or rather, if we look at it in that context, the statement which is coming from Nawaz Sharif and the statement which came in from Pakistan's army chief a short while ago, wherein he said that, Pakistani army wishes to have a good relation with the Indian army or with India. So are these, in different contexts, or will it again be a wishful thinking, which you're pointing out earlier, to look at it in that manner as we want to look at it?
I think there is no other country in the world which loves fooling itself and cherry-picking some stupid, inane statement which a Pakistani makes and then blowing it up to a point where we then delude ourselves into thinking that, yes, wow, the Pakistanis are actually looking for peace with India.
And here is the chance.
I can tell you, I can take you back 40 years. I have a database which is 40 years old. And I can give you at least 1,000 statements from Pakistani army officers and politicians that we all want good relations with India. They say that in public and go back and probably sup with the devil and send terrorists into India, right? Number one. Number two, nobody bothered to read what the army chief of Pakistan said in that particular statement. Mm-hmm. Before that one sentence, what he said and what he said after that. Okay, forget about what he says. And that is the other big problem. We are either so naive or we are so gullible that a statement from a Pakistani we latch on as though it's the word of God, little realizing what is the action on ground. Mm-hmm. Now, if I was a policy maker in India, and probably the Indians don't want people like me to ever become a policy maker because it will, remove these blinkers which we have put as a nation before our eyes. I would not take anything which any Pakistani says seriously. I would take their actions to tell me whether they are interested in good relations with India or not.
Okay.
Now, if their actions on ground were to change, I would then probably look at what statements they make. I would not look at their statements first. Now, we have, upended this whole way of looking at things because we are because we are the inheritors of Chanakya. So we are the great Kautilyan masters and we have all the wisdom of the world. So we will take a silly, inane statement and then make policy on the basis of, number one, on the basis of a statement, number two, on the basis of the 500 people, which is the civil society of Pakistan, which we extrapolate to imagine that the entire country is like them. Now, if you are going to make policy on the basis of these two things, then invariably your policy is going to fall flat on its face. So please look at what is happening on the ground. Has anything changed on the ground? What are the indications coming from the ground? And if you look at that, there's not even the smallest needle which has moved to suggest there's any change in either the Pakistani policy or the Pakistani intentions towards India.
And actions as well. Let me bring in Ambassador Katju here again. And on a point which you made in your initial remark, that is how Nawaz Sharif also spoke about two important players here, that is China and Russia. One, what he was intending to convey, and two, how does this becomes important here?
On China, it is particularly important. Publicly, China is supporting Pakistan. We note the Masood Azhar UN listing, for instance. But it's interesting that he reveals that privately, China at the level of the president, Xi Jinping himself, has been telling Pakistan, please change course. Because it is embarrassing China. The Masood Azhar thing would have embarrassed China. They feel perhaps their strategic interests require this support for Pakistan. So, and I don't see any change in that particular policy. But since China is an all-weather friend and the Chinese are making these huge investments in CPEC, etc., and today if you go to Pakistan, China, it's all China, China, China. America is the villain, China is the great big brother who's helping them. So when he reveals that even China is upset, and you mentioned Dawn leaks, if you recollect, in the Dawn leaks, the then Pakistan Foreign Secretary, who is I think currently on his way out, but he's currently the ambassador in the United States, was reported to have told this meeting where army officers were there, that even Chinese are now getting very wary of supporting us on things like Masood Azhar. Okay. So I think that is something that he is telling his people that, look, the army is taking you down, has taken you down this road of isolation, and he uses the word isolation, taken you down this road, and please beware. But will it really change Pakistan? I don't think so.
Okay.
For one simple reason, that anti-India feeling is not only part of the DNA of the Pakistan army, it is part of the DNA of vast sections of Pakistan opinion and Pakistan people. And we delude ourselves when we think it is not so.
Okay, let me bring in Laskar on this. Laskar, the China and Russia angle, how do you evaluate that? Will this remark coming in from former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, put China and Russia in a position where they will also, exert more pressure on the present Pakistani establishment that you need to work around?
Well, I'm not so sure about the Russians because, the Russian, the warming up of this relation started around 2011-12 when we've seen the sales of some gunship helicopters, and there are talks about buying more military equipment from Russia for Pakistan. But I know for a fact that the Pakistanis have been quietly putting in a lot of pressure on Pakistan on the issue of terrorism. Of course, they may not, work for the listing of Masood Azhar, but they are definitely sending out signals that, look, terrorism is a problem. And that is for a variety of reasons, not just the embarrassment they face abroad, but also because of issues like Xinjiang, because there have been instances of Chinese Uyghur militants training in Pakistan's tribal areas. And, I mean, if you look at the Lal Masjid issue, what was the trigger? The trigger was the kidnapping of some Chinese nationals by the people inside the Lal Masjid. That was when, things really got out of hand. And the Chinese gave the Pakistanis an ultimatum that you've got to get our people out. So I think, again, this is pressure, but, this is a country that negotiates with a gun to its own head.
Okay.
So how do you, I mean, I don't see how this is going to change.
Okay, we're running short of time, but Sushant, concluding comments from you.
Quick point. Even the Zarb-e-Azb operation, one of the primary reasons for that, because every statement which was coming out of the ISPR at that point of time was talking about that ETIM camps have been hit, number one. Number two, but I'm not so sanguine about the prospect of Chinese pressure working, because I think the Chinese are working like what the Americans used to do in the past, used to tell the Pakistanis to clean up their act. But all that the Americans used to be interested in before 9/11 was that as long as you take care of the terrorists who are attacking us, you give us what we want, we'll turn a blind eye to whatever other indiscretions you are committing. I think the Chinese attitude is somewhat similar, that listen, as long as the Uyghur terrorists are concerned or some of these other characters are concerned, which cause concern to us, as long as you clamp down on them, the rest of the stuff, we would want you to keep some lid on them. But, at the end of the day, it's your problem. You carry on doing what you are doing. Let it not affect us. So I think that causation is the same as what it used to be with the Americans. And I think the result is going to be the same. So there will have to be a 9/11 in Beijing or in Shanghai before the Chinese will wake up to what the reality of Pakistan is.
Okay, may God forbid any event like that. But as our panelists have pointed out, that any statements coming in from Pakistani establishment or Pakistani top leadership cannot be taken at face value till the time there are intentions made clear in terms of the actions taken by them to stop the menace of cross-border terrorism and the actions of non-state actors as well. We'll come back again next week with a different topic and different set of guests. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.